My daughter at 50 was diagnosed with breast cancer about 12 weeks ago, and she found it through a mammogram. And if you're saying that it should be every other year, what's the sense of that? If you don't mind taking it every year, how else are you going to diagnose it?
So this is...
You're going to go like this, and you think you do or you don't?
This is a very timely question. Is Hetty every second in the audience, sir? Do I see Hetty? Not so clear. Okay. So this is a debate which is going to obviously range for a very long time, and I think there are lots of people here who could provide multiple points of view from our expert panel. And I just wonder, looking across our grantees here, so that we get a different point of view, who wants to try and handle this? Larry. Oh.
If they shoot me with arrows, it won't hurt anymore. I've been shot with so many arrows. There's a big difference in looking at the effect on a whole population when you're talking about medical economics and those things, when you're talking about the individual. And there are just a few, the whole mammography thing, the whole screening thing is still under active discussion and active debate. There's parts of it that that I think should be emphasized. One is that we have guidelines that we've been adhering to and they've been working, and that's yearly starting at 40. Before we change those guidelines, we have to be extremely careful. We also have to be careful of mathematical models that tell us it's safe to do that. I'm a professional mathematical modeler, and I know that mathematical models can lead you astray. And it's very possible that there will be terrible changes in populations by making the changes, but we have to be very careful about this. And particularly, some of the facts that go into this concern me, and that is that we'll have fewer callbacks for biopsies, for example, because the one you miss, if you do it every 2 years, the one you miss because you didn't do it, is still going to have to get biopsied when it comes up to the mammogram, as well as the ones that occurred during that year. So I'm not sure of that argument that there'll be fewer callbacks, for example. And how it breaks down to the individual in terms of their risks of having to have a mastectomy versus a lumpectomy, for example, which is also a traumatic difference, is something that has to be considered carefully. So that at the present time, this is being actively debated, actively discussed. The population studies, rather than the mathematical models, lead us one way, the mathematical models lead us another way. And I would feel strongly that it's important to abide by the current guidelines from all the major organizations before we make any changes for the individual, while we're having this very, very active discussion.
So the clarification, I think Ken also wants to make a point to your right, is that we haven't changed guidelines. This is a discussion, a scientific inquiry into what might be applicable, and that should reassure you, I hope. But Ken?
No, I think that's right. I mean, the American Cancer Society hasn't changed the guidelines. This is something that we are obviously looking at new data. I'm not a radiologist, but I'm married to one. And I can tell you her reaction to the Times article yesterday. She said, well, I do 8,000 mammograms every year, and 45 cancers she diagnosed last year. They keep scrupulous attention to this. And she does a lot of biopsies, and she's never had anybody complain to her that the biopsy was a horrible experience. And when it comes back as a negative, she said they usually give her a hug. I'm just telling you what she told me over the dinner table. So I would support Larry's caution. I mean, clearly we see a higher risk population, and Dr. Sledge's comments about individualization are critical. I'm all for continued research, but mammography has made an enormous impact and lives saved. It was probably one of our first great advances in breast cancer in the modern era, and we don't want to forget
so
that.
I do want to just point out that this is not just mathematical models. There's actually, I think the good point is that there is a lot of evidence from large screening studies, both, and if you look in Europe, actually everyone in Europe screens every other year. Just pointing that out, and I would say that I think it's something to be important. When someone is diagnosed with a cancer, that's great, and we'll take care of it. But the good news is, even if you missed your mammogram and you came and found another cancer, the good news is that a lot of our therapies today do make up for some of the benefits of early detection, which is a great thing and should make people feel better.
Okay,
and I think that there's important information that's coming forward to help us refine how we do mammography.
It's very